Your Honor, I
Okay,
believe we're doing pretrial matters beforehand.
I'm sorry.
I believe we're doing pretrial matters beforehand.
Okay, okay, let's go ahead and get started with that then. What do we have?
Your Honor, before we begin, the plaintiff has a few preliminary matters that we would like to take care of.
Okay,
Permission to post our team roster in the chat.
okay, permission granted.
Your Honor, we would like permission to screen share our exhibits through our timekeeper.
Okay, I'll allow that.
And Your Honor, the plaintiff asked for permission to make our introductions both for the record and for the judges.
Okay, that's
My
fine.
name is Haley Gleason, and I will be directing Dr. Francis Edwards and crossing Brett Jackson.
Okay,
My name is Annie Moss. I will be presenting the opening statement, direct questioning Cameron Cole, and cross-examining Kennedy Gill.
My name is Cameron Bethley, and I will be directing Brooke Jackson and crossing Harper Hill and giving the closing statement.
My name is Lucille Yos, and I'm portraying Brooke Jackson.
My name is Thompson Amzat, and I'll be portraying Officer Cameron Cole.
My name is Christian Maddie, and I will be portraying Dr. Francis Edwards.
Thank you, Your Honor. The prosecution is now ready to begin.
okay, anything from the defense?
Yes, Your Honor, the defense would like to make introductions as well. My name is Autumn Summers. I'll be directing Kennedy Gill and crossing Cameron Cole.
Okay,
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Justina Vo. I'll be directing Brett Jackson and crossing Brooke Jackson,
Okay.
and giving the opening statement for the defense.
great.
Good morning, Your Honor. I'll be crossing Dr. Francis Edwards, directing Harper Hill, and delivering the closing statement.
Okay,
My name is Lily Williams. I'll be
And
portraying
at this time, we'd
Kennedy
also
Gill.
like to introduce the witnesses.
My name is William Lee. I'll be portraying Harper Hill.
My name is Luke Kertel, and I will be portraying Brett Jackson.
At this time, Your Honor, we also like to ask that all witnesses be pre-sworn in for the sake of time.
sure, we can do that.
Thank you, Your Honor. And lastly, we'd like to note that 4.9 under the mock trial handbook does not allow for sequestration, constructive or otherwise, of the witnesses.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, let's begin. With
May
opening.
I start my opening statement, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
May it please the court, Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, consider the 7 deadly sins. 3 of these, pride, envy, and wrath, led to a life being stolen too early. In the case under judgment today, it was the innocent Shan Lee who fell victim to the defendant Brett Jackson, who was overcome by these emotions. Brett's pride was bruised first by the knowledge that they will never have the opportunity to bear children because of their infertility, and secondly, by the actions of their spouse, Brooke Jackson, who found comfort in the arms of someone else rather than relying only on Brett. Envy then overwhelmed Brett when their paranoia led to the belief that Brooke was having an affair with her coworker and friend, Shan Lee. Jealousy is a powerful motivation for revenge, which Brett proved with their menacing promise to make Brooke hurt like I was hurting at the time. Wrath then consumed Brett, wrath that caused them to threaten Brooke and Shan. Wrath that influenced Brett's actions on July 1st when they saw Brooke and Shan together. Pride, envy, and wrath built to an agonizing crescendo inside Brett that led to the murder of Shan Lee. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my name is Annie Moss, and these are my colleagues Haley Gleason and Cameron Bethley. We are here today representing the state of Louisiana against the defendant Brett Jackson to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he intended to inflict great bodily harm upon or kill Shan Lee when he fired his gun, making Brett Jackson guilty of second-degree murder. The evidence and witnesses we will present today will prove this beyond a reasonable doubt. On July 1st, 2020, Brett Jackson went to Bob's Burgers, attempting to find evidence of his wife cheating on him with Shan Lee. The owner of this establishment, Bob, lawfully rejected Brett's request for his restaurant security footage. Brett then left the restaurant angry, which is when they saw Shan Lee and Brooke Jackson together. Then, in a blind rage, they took out their gun, and shot the man they believed was having an affair with their spouse. The victim, an innocent coworker of Miss Jackson, bravely attempted to save their lives. However, it was too late, as Brett Jackson had already pulled the trigger and shot Shanley in a jealous rage. First, we will call Brooke Jackson, who was there on July 1st when her ex-spouse murdered Shanley. She will describe her life and marriage with Brett and the tumultuous relationship that led to her involvement with the victim. She will explain the events of the day and how the victim attempted to save her life. And finally, she will reveal how after shooting the victim, Brett Jackson fled the scene of the crime while she remained by the side of the dying Shanley. You will then hear from Officer Cameron Cole, the lead crime scene investigator in this case. They will describe the scene and interviews with the witnesses, including the defendant, Brett Jackson. They will also explain their analysis of the gun used by the defendant and inform you that they discovered the presence of gunpowder residue on the defendant's clothes. Finally, you will hear from Dr. Francis Edwards, an expert psychiatrist who evaluated the mental state of the defendant. They will describe the method of evaluation they most typically use and share their assessment of the defendant. They will also explain how they assessed both his mood and personality, finding him free of any mental impairments that would call his competency to stand trial into question. The opposing counsel will attempt to convince you that Brett Jackson did not pull the trigger of the gun and will try to make you doubt that the murder of Shanley was intentional. However, their efforts will be in vain. Through the eyewitness account of Brooke and the abundance of evidence proving the defendant's motivation and intent to inflict great bodily harm, the state will prove to you beyond reasonable doubt that Brett Jackson is guilty of second-degree murder. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you, counsel. Well, now we'll hear from the defense.
Yes, Your Honor. You've heard the prosecution's theory of what happened on July 1st, 2020. But ladies and gentlemen of the jury, seeing is believing. Good morning, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury. My name is Justina Vo, and my co-counsel and I represent Brett Jackson in today's case. When Brett Jackson found out in early 2020 that his spouse, Brooke Jackson, was cheating on him, he tried everything to save their relationship. But in May of 2020, after months of infidelity, of her lies, he knew that his only option was to get a divorce. So Brett visited an attorney, and his attorney advised him to collect evidence of Brooke's infidelity. Brett knew that Brooke and Shan spent time together at Bob's Burgers. So he went there on July 1st, 2020, hoping to get video surveillance footage of Brooke and Shan together. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Brett Jackson has a Fifth Amendment constitutional right not to testify in court today. But he is here. He has decided to waive this right, to come here and tell you the truth about what happened on July 1st, 2020. You will hear him tell you that when he saw Brooke and Shan on the street, he was surprised to see them there. Brett knew that to Brooke and Shan, he was an obstacle in their relationship. So he became frightened when Shan immediately reached into her pocket because he thought that she was pulling out a weapon. And because he feared for his own life, Brett pulled his own weapon in self-defense. Multiple witnesses will attest to the fact that Shan had lunged towards Brett, causing him to drop his gun. Brett will tell you that after that gun was knocked out of his hand, it hit the ground and misfired. But once he realized that that happened, out of fear for his own life, he panicked and he ran. And once he realized that it was safe to return to the scene, he did. He wanted to tell Brooke, the police, anyone, the truth. Shanley's death was a tragic accident. You will hear from Kennedy Gill, a licensed expert gunsmithing, who will testify that Brett Jackson's gun had an extremely light trigger. This means that in her expert opinion, the gun's hair trigger caused that gun to misfire from ground level. We will also call Harper Hill, a friend of Brett's who was at Bob's Burgers on July 1st. He will tell you that Brett had no intention of harming Shan Lee. As the defense, we do not have the burden of proof in this case. It is the prosecution's responsibility to prove to you beyond any reasonable doubt that Brett Jackson is guilty of second-degree murder. We are confident that the prosecution will fail to meet that burden today. You will see many questions arise when they call Brooke Jackson to the stand. Brooke may try to say that Brett shot Shan, but the evidence indicates that Brooke's eyes were closed when that gun went off. You will hear from Officer Cameron Cole, the police detective, whose own ballistics report confirms that the bullet's trajectory is consistent with the gun firing from ground level. And lastly, you will hear from Dr. Francis Edwards, whose entire expert testimony did not make a single official conclusion about what had happened on July 1st, 2020. Why? Because there is simply no evidence that would allow him to do so. Even the prosecution's own expert witness knows that seeing is believing. But today you will hear that not a single person saw Brett Jackson shoot Shan Lee. The evidence will show that Shan Lee's death was a tragic accident. And for that reason, at the end of this trial, my co-counsel and I will return and ask that you deliver a verdict of not guilty.
Okay, very good, counsel. Is the prosecution ready to call their first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. We call Brooke Jackson to the stand.
Okay. Ms. Jackson.
Good afternoon. My name is Cameron Bethley, and I have some questions for you.
Do we have Ms. Jackson here?
Yes, sir, right here.
Okay.
Would you please introduce yourself for the court?
My name is Brooke Jackson. I'm 32 years old and I live in Grande City, Louisiana.
How do you know the defendant, Brett Jackson?
Brett is my ex-spouse.
What was he like in college when you first met?
Whenever we first met, he was pretty arrogant and kind of know-it-all. And at first I didn't really like him, but he did grow on me eventually.
When did you get married to Brett Jackson?
We got married in 2015.
You say his persistence eventually won you over. Were there any other qualities that drew you to him?
We both really, really wanted to start a family. He wanted to be a father as much as I wanted to be a mother, and that really was a driving point to why I wanted to marry this man.
At the time that you were married, were you ever aware that he was medically unable to have children?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
If you allow me to continue with the line of questioning I have, I will establish the relevance.
Okay. Well, and I'm sorry. So the grounds, the objections, relevance, you're gonna lay a foundation for this?
Yes, sir. Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. I'll allow you to continue the question.
So I will repeat the question. At the time, were you aware of the fact that he was not able to have children?
I was not aware at all.
How did Brett feel when he learned of his infidelity?
Objection, Your Honor, speculation.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
The question I asked was, how did Brett feel when he learned of his infidelity?
Okay.
And Brooke Jackson is only testifying to how she thinks that Brett Jackson feels, not
I'm
what
going
she actually knows.
to sustain that objection.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. At this point, how would you describe the condition of your marriage?
After I found out that Brett couldn't have children, he became very, very paranoid and controlling, and his paranoia really tore apart our marriage.
Objection, Your Honor, character evidence.
Your Honor, Brooke Jackson is only testifying to what she knows about Brett Jackson, considering that she was married to him for multiple years.
Your Honor, if I may, the traits of paranoia, controlling, and such are still characterizing Brett Jackson and should not be allowed.
Your Honor, Brooke Jackson is simply stating what she feels that Brett Jackson was like during her time that she was married to him.
given that it's based on our personal observations, I'll allow the line of question.
Yes, Your Honor.
Now I will re-ask, at this point, how did you describe your condition of your marriage?
It was very torn apart after finding out that he couldn't have kids.
Did you attempt to repair the state of your marriage?
I did. Brett was still my husband. I still chose to marry him. And so after asking him multiple times to go to marriage counseling, we finally ended up going. Sadly, it did not really help us, but we did go.
Will you please describe your relationship with Shanley?
Shan was my coworker and eventually my friend. I could talk to him about my marital problems because he went through the same kind of things. It was strictly platonic, however.
What was your relationship with Shan, or what is your relationship with Shan anything more than a friendship?
It was never more than a friendship. We kept things strictly platonic.
As you developed your friendship with Shan, how was your relationship with Brett?
It continued to get strained. Every day that went by, he just got more controlling over me and paranoid. And anytime he thought I was speaking to anyone, even through work, he would just get angry and paranoid.
Ms. Jackson, now I'd like to turn to July 1st of 2020. What were your plans on the afternoon of July 1st?
I was with Shan. We were out getting coffee, and on the way to lunch is when we encountered Brett.
And what did Brett do when you noticed him, or when he noticed you?
As soon as he saw us, he immediately, before we got the chance to do anything, pulled out his gun and pointed it directly at me and Shan.
Were you aware that Brent owned a gun?
I had no idea that he had this weapon in our home. I had no idea he ever bought one, no.
How did you feel during this situation?
I have never been more scared in my entire life. This man that I was trying to divorce was pointing a weapon at me and Shan.
Can you explain exactly what happened when Brent pulled his gun from his holster?
When he pulled his gun, he pointed at us, like I said, and Shan tried to save us, tried to stop Brett because we both thought we were about to get shot. And he tried to hold up his hand and block the gun, but it was too late, and Brett shot Shan.
Objection, Your Honor. This is the opinion on the ultimate matter. This matters for the jury alone to decide if Brett Jackson had shot Shanley.
Your Honor, Brooke Jackson is simply testifying her experiences.
Yeah, based on her personal observation, I'm going to allow it.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. How did you respond when you saw that Shan had been shot?
After I saw Brett shoot Shan, out of fear, I shut my eyes after I saw he'd been shot and like the gun sound hit me. And I just closed my eyes out of fear. I've never been more scared in my entire life.
Just to clarify, Ms. Jackson, did you actually see Brent Jackson pull the trigger and shoot Shan?
I did. Brett Jackson aimed his gun and shot Shan in the chest.
Objection, Your Honor. This is an opinion on the ultimate matter.
Your Honor, we're simply stating what Brooke Jackson actually saw.
Your Honor, if I may, this is further unfair extrapolation. Nowhere in Brooke's affidavit does it say that she specifically saw Brett Jackson shoot Shanley. In fact, it says that her eyes were closed when the shot happened.
Okay. Given that you're going to have an opportunity to cross-examine her, I'm going to allow the questioning, and you'll have an opportunity to question her on that.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Now I will ask, how did you respond when you saw that Shan had been shot?
I opened my eyes and Shan was bleeding out on the concrete, and I called 911 to try and save him.
When the police arrived at the scene, did you speak to the responding officer?
I did. I spoke to Officer Cole and told him exactly what I saw happen.
Thank you. No further questions. We now offer this witness for cross.
Okay. Defense.
Yes, Your Honor. Hello, Ms. Jackson. My name is Jacina Vo, and I'm just going to ask you a few questions today. Now, Ms. Jackson, is it your testimony that your relationship with Shan was strictly platonic?
Yes, we never pushed anything past friend.
And you made an affidavit in this case?
I did.
And you would recognize if I showed you?
Of course.
Your Honor, may I screen share the affidavit?
You may.
And Ms. Jackson, is this your affidavit right here? Do you recognize these words?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And can you read along as I read out loud? I had fallen in love with Shan and wanted to be with them instead of Brett, who I knew did not love me anymore. So would you further define that as platonic?
We never did anything romantic, just I knew that after I was able to get divorced with Brett, this was the man that I would eventually push past platonicity after I got divorced.
But you and Shan began falling in love during your affair. I mean, during your marriage with Brett, is that right?
Yes, but we never acted on it. I would never cheat on my husband.
Right. Yes. Brett was never physically violent during your marriage, is that right?
He was verbally threatening, and he did threaten me multiple times. He said, I better not catch you talking with anyone else. He never physically got physical with me. I would leave if he physically hurt me.
And Ms. Jackson, are you referring to a singular threat that said, I better not ever catch you with anyone else or will not be good?
Well, his character was very paranoid, and he...
Right, but you don't know what he meant by this threat, is that right?
Well,
Objection, Your Honor, badgering the witness.
Your Honor, if I may, these questions are simple and the witness is being non-responsive.
Your Honor, she's talking over my witnesses and not letting them respond.
Yeah, allow her to respond to the question, but I'm going to allow her to continue to cross-examine.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Jackson, I'm going to ask that again. Did you know what Mr. Jackson meant by, I better not ever catch you with anyone else or will not be good?
He said it will not be good, so I assumed it wouldn't be good. And he also had a weapon hidden from me, so I assumed these things wouldn't be good.
Right, but you didn't know. Okay.
I did
And
not
after
know.
discovering your affair with Shan Lee, he didn't ever threaten to physically harm Shan to you specifically, did he?
I never had an affair, and he never found actual evidence of me having an affair, no.
Right, so it's your testimony that you never had an affair?
No, and there's no proof of me having an affair, which I didn't have an affair.
Right. I want to shift and discuss your communication with Brett regarding this lack of affair with Shan. Now, Brett discovered some text messages you had with Shan in January of 2020. Is that correct?
No, they weren't between me and Shan. I don't see any text messages.
If I showed you those text messages, would you recognize them?
If they were mine.
Sure. Your Honor, may I share my screen for
Yes.
the text messages?
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm now showing opposing counsel what has been marked with as Exhibit A. Ms. Jackson, are these not your texts?
It looks like Shan sent them to someone, but I don't see who the recipient was, and I don't remember receiving nor sending these messages.
Your Honor, if I may, the lack of truthfulness in this witness is not
Objection, Your
in
Honor.
accordance with the
Nothing in exhibit
stipulations.
states specifically that Brooke was the recipient of these text messages.
Your Honor,
That Shan Lee.
Your Honor, if I may, stipulation 10 stipulates that the text messages represented in January in Exhibit A were sent on January 21st between.
Does not state that Brooke was.
Hold on, wait, let her finish. Wait, let her finish. Go ahead. So.
Ms. Brooke
Rogan.
Jackson is familiar with these exhibits as they were sent on January 21st, 2020. It is in the stipulation 10.
Okay, so this is this was already previously stipulated to as this was her text messages. Is that right, defense counsel? I'm sorry, prosecution.
According to stipulation 7, all objections to the authenticity of the exhibit have been waived. However, we are not objecting to the authenticity. We are only stating that Brooke Jackson was not the recipient of these text messages.
Your Honor, this is the authenticity. This is Brooke Jackson's text messages with Shan Lee that she is clearly trying to deny.
Okay, well, I'm gonna, given that these were previously stipulated to, I'm gonna allow you to continue questioning her about this text message.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Jackson, are these the text messages that you sent to Shan Lee?
Did he say that we're just going to go ahead and say that these are mine?
Yes.
Okay, stipulation 7 doesn't, okay, never mind.
What does stipulation 7 say?
According to stipulation 7, it says all objections to the authenticity of any exhibit have been waived, and all exhibits are what they report themselves to be. However, all objections related to any exhibit are perceived for trial.
Your Honor, this purports itself to be the recipient of Brooke Jackson.
Also, the opposing counsel has not entered these text messages into evidence.
Well, Your Honor, I would be able to enter into evidence if the witness would confirm that it was her text messages.
Well, we've all objections to authenticity have been waived, and given that, again, I'm going to let you to continue to question her about it. If she chooses to deny, you're going to have to handle that. Okay.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right.
So, Ms. Jackson, are these your text messages with Shanley?
I am familiar with these. I was shown when I got to the courthouse today. I'm familiar with them, but they never.
Right. Thank you. And you also shared some emails with Shanley. Is that right?
Through my work email.
Right. And if I showed you those emails, would you be able to recognize them?
If they were from my email address, yes.
Your Honor, I am now showing Brooke Jackson what has been marked as Exhibit B. Ms. Jackson, is that your work email?
It is not.
It is not badjackson@gmail.com?
I've never referred to myself as the Bad Jackson, no ma'am.
Objection, Your Honor. This is unfair extrapolation. These are clearly Ms. Jackson's emails. It's been stipulated. It's in her affidavit that she has sent emails to Sean Lee.
As stated previously with stipulation 7, she can still not testify on things that she is not the personal sender of.
Sure. So if that's in her affidavit, and if you need to handle that with her on your cross and bring her back to our affidavit, if that's what you have to do, but I'm going to allow the line of questioning.
Yes, Your Honor. And Ms. Jackson, Sean Lee knew Brett Jackson, right? Because you talked about him.
He knew that he was my coworker.
Right. And can you read the subject line of this email?
Still can't believe Brett doesn't know.
Right. And so after this discovery, Brett confronted you about the affair. Is that right?
He did.
Objection, Your Honor. These emails have not been entered into evidence.
Oh, Your Honor, I apologize. I would like to offer, file, and introduce Exhibit B into evidence.
Prosecution, you have any objections?
Objection, Your Honor. There was a lack of foundation to enter these emails into evidence.
Okay, we have a prior stipulation. Given the prior stipulation, I'm going to admit them into evidence. So I admit.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. And Ms. Jackson, after this discovery, Brett confronted you about the affair. Is that right?
Yeah.
Right. And so between counseling with Brett Jackson and cheating with Shanley, you never directly told Brett Jackson that you wanted a divorce. Is that right?
I was never cheating on Shanley, and I definitely did try and divorce Brett.
Right, but you also said that your relationship was strictly platonic despite calling him your lover, right?
I never called him my lover.
It wasn't in the
email was
the affidavit.
signed. No, the email was signed your lover, if that's where you're getting from, but I did not send that email.
Ms. Jackson, I'm referring to an earlier statement in which I've read your affidavit to you out loud, in which you said that you were falling in love with Brett Jackson. Is that right? I mean, Sean Lee, is that right?
I never called him my lover. I said that I had strong feelings and I'd.
All right, I'm going to move on,
Okay.
Ms. Jackson.
All right, stop.
Objection,
Stop.
Your Honor. Badgering my witness.
Yeah, let's not talk over each other. Okay, allow the witness to finish and wait a second. Okay, because it's my understanding there's somewhat of a lag too. Okay, so given that we're on the computer and all this, just give each other an opportunity to finish. Okay, thank you.
My apologies, Your Honor. Ms. Jackson, let's go to the date of the incident. When Brett first pulled out his gun, you were frozen in fear looking at him, right?
Of course. He was pointing a weapon at us.
And if Shan had reached into their pocket for a gun, you wouldn't have seen it, right?
I was there, but I didn't really have time because Brett started to confront us so quickly.
And you told Officer Cameron Cole that you had closed your eyes before or after the shot was fired. Is that right?
It was after the shot had fired, but I did. I was in a frenzy, and I did say that I was not completely sure because I just witnessed a man being murdered. But it was after the shot.
Yes, yes. And Miss Jackson, because your eyes were closed, you didn't see that gun fall to the ground. Is that right?
Oh no, I saw Brett pull the trigger. It didn't fall to the ground.
Your Honor, if I may, I ask that this be stricken from the record. Objection to this. I ask that Brooke's statement be stricken from the record as it is unfair extrapolation, and it is materially affecting the case.
Okay.
In
Prosecution,
affidavit,
prosecution's response to that.
Your Honor, I'm sorry, could she restate her objection one more time?
Sure.
Yes, I can. This is unfair extrapolation, and I ask that it be stricken from the record.
On what grounds?
Ms. Jackson, in her affidavit, states that she closed her eyes when the shot was fired. And in her testimony to Officer Cameron Cole, she closed her eyes before or after the shot was fired. And by telling the jury that she saw him pull the trigger materially affects the case and is more prejudicial than probative to the court.
Your Honor, Brooke Jackson is simply not testifying outside of her affidavit, so she has a right to make her statements.
Okay, give me.
Your Honor,
show me the affidavit where she says she has her eyes closed.
Yes, Your Honor. May I share? May I share
Yes,
it?
go ahead.
Your Honor, it says it right here. When the gun went off, I immediately closed my eyes and fell down in complete fear. And in a later testimony, you will see that Ms. Jackson told the sergeant that she had closed her eyes before or after the shot, therefore not affirming if she actually saw Brett Jackson pull that trigger.
Yeah, it says when the gun went off. So the timing is not entirely clear as to when she closed her eyes. So I'm gonna deny the objection. I'm gonna allow you to continue cross-examining her, okay?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. And so, Ms. Jackson, let me repeat that again. Because your eyes were closed, you didn't see the gun fall to the ground. Is that right?
if you want me to explain exactly what was in my affidavit, Brett shot Shan, and when
No,
the gun went
Ms.
off, I closed
Jackson.
my eyes. When the gun went off, it was in
Objection,
Brett's
Your
hand.
Honor. This is a very simple question. It does not require an explanation. Ms. Jackson can further explain herself on redirect, but for the sake of time purposes, the witness is being unresponsive.
Objection, Your Honor. The witness has a right to continue her answer to the question.
Let's continue. Go ahead and continue the questioning, counsel. Let's go ahead and wrap this portion up.
Should I re-ask it then, Your Honor?
However you want to proceed, go ahead.
Ms. Jackson, with the yes or no, because your eyes were closed, you did not see that gun fall to the ground. Is that correct?
It didn't fall to the ground. It was in Brett's hand when it went off.
And that's your testimony today?
Well, when I said Brett shot Shan, I meant it in my testimony. So yes, it was.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. Just to clarify, when did you close your eyes?
Like I said in my affidavit, I said Brett shot Shan. I was there. I was so close. And I saw Brett shoot Shan. And when it went off, I closed my eyes. I could see where it went off when Brett shot him.
Objection, Your Honor. This is still unfair extrapolation. The timing of when the shot went off is unclear, and we still have yet to hear testimony from the sergeant.
Your Honor, we've already established the order of events with Ms. Jackson.
Yeah, I'm going to sustain the objection because it's not entirely clear from the affidavit. So
Thank you, Your Honor.
No further questions.
all right. Next witness.
Your Honor, the prosecution would like to call Officer Cameron Cole to the stand.
Okay. Is Officer Cole here?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, go ahead.
Good morning, Officer Cole. My name is Annie Moss, and I'm going to be asking you a few questions today. Will you please introduce yourself to the court?
My name is Officer Cameron Cole, and I'm the lead homicide investigator for the Grande Parish Sheriff's Office.
How long have you been working for the Sheriff's Office?
Over 15 years, and the last 5 acting as lead homicide investigator.
In those 15 years, how many homicides have you investigated?
Over 50 homicides with a conviction rate of over 90%.
Officer Cole, How do you ensure such a high conviction rate?
Well, I take pride in what I do and I make sure that my standards is the highest in my field.
What is your educational background regarding criminal justice?
I have an undergraduate in criminal justice and a master's degree in criminology theories and research methods.
Have you testified in court before?
Yes, over 24 times.
Your Honor, I now offer Officer Cameron Cole as an expert in the fields of homicide investigation, criminal justice, and criminology theory. I have established this witness's expertise, experience, and education in this field.
Any objections?
Your Honor, we ask that the witness define each of the fields that they're being entered as an expert witness in before they be entered.
Please restate the question.
No, I'm sorry. What, and prosecution, you say you're offering the witness as an expert in criminal investigations?
In homicide investigation, criminal justice, and criminology theory.
Okay. So she's defined the areas of expertise. Counsel for the defense, would you still have an objection to that?
I'm sorry, is that criminal justice, criminal theory, and homicide investigations?
Yes, ma'am.
We do object to the criminal investigations as we haven't laid a foundation for criminal investigations at large and only homicide investigations, but we have no objection to the homicide investigation expertise.
Your Honor, I only said homicide investigation. I didn't say criminal investigation.
My apologies, Your Honor. I must have misheard. In that case, we do object, as in the stipulations, they do stipulate that both Cameron Cole and Kennedy Gill are allowed to testify to their expertise on Exhibit F1 and F2. We ask that expertise only be limited to F1 and F2, rather than all of the exhibits as it's stipulated in the stipulations.
Okay, if this was, go ahead, and what's the prosecution's response to that?
I'm okay with that, Your Honor.
Okay, so then, so is it that you're asking to offer this witness as an expert in, as stipulated in F1 and F2?
Yes, Your Honor, and Exhibit E.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yes.
The stipulation says that they are only allowed, and I can read the stipulation if needed, they're only allowed to have the expert testimony on Exhibit F insofar as their experience to testify. This does not apply to Exhibit E, but we are fine with Exhibit F.
Okay, but what is the area of expertise, I'm sorry, that we're going to admit this witness in? We're not going to admit a witness as an expert on an exhibit. We're going to admit a witness as an expert in a field. So what's the field?
Your Honor, this officer is an expert in the fields of homicide investigation, criminal justice, and criminology theory.
Okay, and is there any objection to that?
Yes, Your Honor. As we say, we object to this witness being entered as any expert at all, but they are allowed to testify to their expertise on Exhibits F.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes.
I have established my witness's education, expertise, and experience in these fields, and I would like her to be entered as an exhibit in those fields.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand. So hold on, what is Exhibit F that we're going to be looking at?
Oh, would you like me to respond or?
Yeah.
Exhibit F is the trajectory diagram of the bullet, and that is stipulated that Sergeant Cameron Cole is allowed to testify to their expertise on that, but not on any other exhibits, and therefore they should not be entered as an expert.
Okay, so I'm going to allow this witness to be entered as an expert in homicide investigations. Okay.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. Go
Thank you,
ahead.
Your Honor. Officer Cole, are you familiar with the event under trial that occurred on July 1st of 2020?
Yes, I was the officer dispatched to the scene of the crime.
After you arrived on the scene, how did you proceed with your investigation?
I started by taking any statements from witnesses that were still on the scene of the crime.
To whom did you speak first?
Objection, Your Honor. This question calls for hearsay and out-of-court statement asserted for the matter of the fact.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes.
My witness can testify to what they have been informed of. They are not testifying to the truth of the matter, but in their present sense impression.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Look, I'm going to allow her to question because the question wasn't what did someone else say? The question was to whom did you speak? And so that's what I'm going to allow her to ask.
Yes, Your Honor.
Officer Cole, to whom did you speak first?
I spoke to the defendant's ex-spouse, Brooke Jackson.
What did you learn from Ms. Jackson?
She informed me that Brett did in fact shoot Shan.
This testimony is relying on out-of-court statements, and this is hearsay, as this is being asserted for the truth of the matter.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes.
Your Honor, this is not an out-of-court statement. This is a statement directly from the affidavit.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yeah.
There are plenty of statements within the affidavits, but they are out-of-court statements nonetheless. An in-court statement is allowed. This is not an in-court statement. This is taken at the crime scene. So therefore, this is hearsay. This is the definition of hearsay.
Given that, I guess Ms. Brooke is a witness here. I'm going to allow the line of questioning.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer Cole, if I may ask again, what did you learn from Ms. Jackson in your interview with her?
Ms. Jackson informed me that Brett Jackson did in fact shoot Shanley.
Who did you interview next?
Interview the owner of Big Bob's Burger, Bob.
What did you learn from this witness?
He informed me that the defendant, Brett Jackson, was initially there to obtain video footages of Brooke cheating. Sorry.
Did you interview any other witnesses at this time?
Yes, I interviewed the friend of Brett Jackson, Harper Hill.
What did you learn from Mr. Hill?
He informed me that Brett was the owner of the gun that was used in the homicide and was seen shortly fleeing the scene.
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation. I don't believe Harper Hill has established their knowledge of Brett Jackson owning this gun. And again, they have not testified to their knowledge of Brett Jackson owning this gun.
Response.
Your Honor, permission to respond?
Yeah. Mhm.
Your Honor, Harper Hill informed the officer that Brett Jackson was the owner of the gun.
I'm going to sustain the objection.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Did you ever interview the defendant, Brett Jackson?
Yes, I later had a chance to interview him.
What did you learn from Mr. Jackson?
I learned that he thought that Shan was going to shoot him.
After interviewing your witnesses, what was your next step in the investigation?
I then analyzed the gun.
Your Honor, may I allow my timekeeper to share my evidence onto the screen?
Yes, you may.
Technical difficulties, Your Honor. Please give us a second. Okay, thank you. Your Honor, permission to show the witnesses evidence.
Yes, go ahead.
Officer Cole, do you recognize this piece of evidence?
Yes, I do.
Can you identify it for the court?
This was a weapon used in the homicide.
Your Honor, I would now like to offer, file, and introduce Exhibit E as evidence.
Any objections?
Yes, Your Honor. I don't believe the witness has been asked if the exhibit has been altered or is a fair copy of what they've seen before.
I believe he just testified that the officer just testified as to recognition of the weapon. Therefore, I'm going to go ahead and allow. I'm going to admit the exhibit.
Your Honor, our computer battery is running low. Maybe switch to another laptop that we are already logged into the Zoom on.
Sure. How's that going to affect the time? We have the blue shirt. Is that are you going to be able to switch quickly?
Yes, sir. We have it right next to us.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. Officer Cole, what did you learn through your analysis of the gun used in the homicide?
Okay, hold on. We need it. If there's another computer in the room, you need to mute it because it's echoing.
Officer Cole, will you please restate your answer? Our computer was muted.
Okay, I learned that it had a weak trigger.
Is a weak trigger common in most handguns?
Objection, Your Honor. Lack of foundation. I don't believe the officer has testified to the interior of this gun at all or the inner ballistics of it. And so I don't think looking at a diagram of the physical gun itself is enough foundation to testify to whether the trigger was weak or not.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes.
Your Honor, my witness has examined this gun and I'm not asking about the interior mechanisms. I am only asking about the weak trigger that the officer found present on the gun.
Okay, I'm going to sustain the objection for lack of foundation.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer Cole, what does having a weak trigger imply about this handgun?
Objection, Your Honor. I believe my past objection has been sustained and that they do not have a lack of foundation to testify to the trigger of this gun. And this question is again asking about the trigger of the gun, which has not been laid for foundation yet.
I agree. Given that the witness hasn't testified as to his inspection of the gun, I'm going to sustain that objection.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Officer Cole, did you notice anything else unusual about the gun in question?
Yes, I noticed scratches and a dent at the bottom of the handle.
Is it possible that the scratches present on the gun handle were there prior to the incident?
This is highly possible.
Now, Officer Cole, let's discuss the trajectory of the bullet. Your Honor, permission to allow my timekeeper to share exhibits F1 and 2 onto the screen?
Yes, that's fine.
Your Honor, my timekeeper's computer died. May I hold it up to the screen?
Sure.
Officer Cole, do you recognize these pieces of evidence?
Yes, I do.
Can you identify them for the court?
This is the entry and exit wounds of the bullet.
Your Honor, I would now like to offer, file, and introduce exhibits F1 and 2 as evidence.
Any objections?
No, Your Honor, under stipulation 8, all objections to both these exhibits are waived.
Okay, so admitted.
Officer Cole, what do you confirm upon investigating the trajectory of the bullet?
It was while investigating this trajectory, it was concluded that it was shot from around the waist area below, and it's consistent to it being shot from Brett Jackson's side holster from an upward angle.
Officer Cole, did you ever examine the defendant's clothes during your investigation?
Yes, I did.
When you examined Brett's clothing, did you find any pertinent evidence to this investigation?
I found gunshot powder remnants on his clothes.
What does the presence of gunshot residue indicate?
It says that it shows that it's from a person who just recently fired a gun.
While investigating this case, did you discover any reasons Brett Jackson would have to fear for his life?
No,
Objection. This is speculation. This witness has no, well, they are not Brett Jackson, so they cannot testify to whatever Brett Jackson was thinking on that day in that incident.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes.
As an expert witness, this witness is allowed to speculate as present sense impression.
No, I'm going to sustain that objection.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer Cole, upon completing your investigation, what was your ultimate determination?
I concluded that the gun used in this homicide was owned, drawn, and used, shot by Brett Jackson.
I'm going to have
Your
to,
Honor, no further questions.
I'm going to have to object, Your Honor, to that last question on the opinion of the ultimate issue. Well, rather to the testimony itself, ruling Brett Jackson as somebody who unequivocally pulled the trigger and shot Shanley. That is for the jury to decide. While the expert witness is allowed to state the probability of such, they are not allowed to say that Brett Jackson unequivocally shot Shanley.
Your Honor,
Respond.
may I respond?
Yeah.
My witness is stating that Brett Jackson confessed to owning, drawing, and pointing the gun at Mr. Lee, not that he shot Mr. Lee. That is for the jury to decide. We are not stating that.
Okay, so I believe the witness testified that he found gunpowder or noticed the gunpowder and based on his investigation, he concluded that. So I'm going to allow that testimony. Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
May I proceed with cross-examination, Your Honor?
You may.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Autumn Summers. I'm just going to be asking you a few questions. So as a lead investigator, you have a conviction of 90%, correct?
Yes, an over 90% conviction rate.
And that means that Brett Jackson being acquitted would mess up that rate. Isn't that right?
No, it wouldn't, because I have other homicides that I
I'm
investigate.
sorry, Sergeant Cole, let me rephrase that question. Wouldn't that lower your conviction rate?
Yes, it has a chance of doing that.
Thank you. And you did not personally witness the events that led to Shanley's death. Isn't that right?
No, because I was a homicide. I was the officer dispatched to the crime scene. I was not a witness at the scene.
So is that a no? Sergeant Cole, you did not see those events that took place?
No.
And so most of what you know about these events is taken from witness statements that were not your own, correct?
Because I'm the officer.
Is that a yes, Sergeant Cole?
Yes.
Thank you, Sergeant Cole. And for the first witness you spoke to was Brooke Jackson, right?
Yes, it was.
Brooke told you that she closed her eyes and she wasn't exactly sure when that gun went off, correct?
Correct.
And she also told you that she couldn't be sure whether that gun was shot before or after she closed her eyes. Isn't that right?
Yes, she said she was not sure that it was shot, but she did say that she saw him shoot the gun.
And after talking to Brooke, you spoke to Bob, correct?
Yes.
Bob told you that he didn't see the incident himself, right?
No, he was not at the scene of the crime.
And therefore, Bob did not see Brett Jackson pull a trigger. Isn't that right?
No,
You also concluded that no other person in that restaurant had seen the incident as well, right?
no, they did not.
So no one else in the restaurant had seen Brett Jackson pull a trigger.
Your Honor, objection asked and answered.
May I respond, Your Honor?
You may.
My previous question was if anyone in the restaurant had seen the incident, not that they had seen Brett Jackson pull the trigger. This is an entirely separate question.
Okay, I'm going to allow the question. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Do you need me to re-ask that question?
Yes, please.
So no one in the restaurant was able to say that they saw Brett Jackson pull the trigger. Is that right?
No, no one was able to see that, but we have Brooke Jackson who did say she saw it.
Thank you, Sergeant Cole. And the next witness you spoke to was Harper Hill, correct?
Yes, I did.
And Harper Hill testified that they were at the scene, correct?
Well, he said that he wasn't much use to us, but he did say that he saw it.
Oh, my question is if Harper Hill was at the scene. Isn't that right?
He was at the crime scene
Thank you. And you dismissed Harper Hill even though they were at the scene. Isn't that right?
because he didn't give us much information because he didn't witness it.
So really, you can speak to a single witness who said that they saw Brett Jackson pull the trigger, correct?
I spoke to Brooke Jackson, who claimed that Brett did shoot Shanley.
Your Honor, I'm going to have to move to strike that statement as, again, that is the opinion on the ultimate issue that is for the jury to decide, not Brooke Jackson, and on the basis of unfair extrapolation. As Brooke Jackson never stated that they saw Brett Jackson put his hand on the trigger, but they did see him aim it, and that is not the same thing.
Response?
May you restate the objection, please?
Yes, of course. So one, on the basis of the opinion on the ultimate issue, as it is not Brooke Jackson's job to state whether or not Brett Jackson unequivocally shot Shanley, and two, on unfair extrapolation, as we know the timeline of these events are extremely messy, and Brooke Jackson never said that they saw Brett pull the trigger. And so saying so is an unfair extrapolation.
Response?
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes.
Brooke Jackson has previously testified here in court, and she testified that she did indeed see Brett Jackson shoot Shanley.
Mm-hmm.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yeah, no, look, I'm going to sustain the objections on fair extrapolation. Okay, the timeline is messy, and your question was regarding pulling the trigger. Okay, so that's what I'm going to sustain the objection on it.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I'm going to ask you that question again, Ms. Cole. You never spoke to a single witness who said that they saw Brett Jackson pull the trigger. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. And redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Oh, okay, no redirect. All right, next witness.
Your Honor, the prosecution would like to call Dr. Francis Edwards to the stand.
Okay, Dr. Edward?
I'm here.
Okay, do you have a camera? There we go. All right, let's go.
Dr. Edwards, can you please state your name and profession?
I'm Dr. Francis Edwards, and I'm a psychiatric evaluator for the state.
And what is your experience in your field?
I graduated valedictorian from my high school. Then I went on to Tulane and got my dual bachelor's degree in biology and chemistry. Then I went to Harvard and graduated with honors and became a licensed medical doctor. Then I completed my residency at Johnson School of Psychiatric Medicine.
And what is your current occupation?
I own my own private practice in Grande City, and I am hired on occasion by the state.
Have you before been an expert on the subject of psychology and other trials?
Yes, I have testified in over 12 trials, and I have evaluated over 30 defendants in my career.
Your Honor, I now offer Dr. Francis Edwards as an expert in psychiatry and forensic psychology. I've established her education, expertise, and experience in her field.
Objections?
Yes, Your Honor. Under Rule 701, it's not enough that an expert be qualified. That expert's testimony must also assist the trier of fact in determining a fact at issue. It's already been stipulated that Mr. Jackson is competent to stand trial. Therefore, this witness's opinions are irrelevant.
Okay, I'm gonna allow the admission of Dr. Edwards as a forensic psychologist based on the prior experience, education, and training.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Edwards, what is your typical method of questioning your patients?
I usually interview the defendant, and then I perform a personality test.
Can you explain this test in layman's terms?
When I interview the defendant, I ask questions with scenarios, and in these scenarios, I ask them to provide me with their ability to recollect fact, analyze different scenarios, and give me their interpretation of those scenarios.
Dr. Edwards, I would now like to direct my questions towards your interview with Mr. Jackson. Can you explain the conversation that you held with the defendant?
In the conversation, Brett Jackson appeared to be very hostile and frustrated when talking about the relationship between Brooke Jackson and Shan Lee.
And how did you assess Mr. Jackson and his memory recollection?
He had no memory loss whatsoever. I say this due to the fact that he had no mental illness or defect to cause.
Objection. Your Honor, under Rule 704, expert witnesses cannot testify to the defendant's mental state as it relates to an element of the crime.
Your Honor, this witness is testifying not to the mental state, but to the memory recollection of this defendant. We've already entered her as an expert witness in her field.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes, go ahead.
A memory recollection is mental state, Your Honor.
Okay, well, so given that she's walked through the methodology, and I'm going to allow her to testify, given that she's been, entered as an expert in forensic psychiatry. In addition, she's testifying as the results of, I guess, her examination. Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor. And how did Mr. Jackson's mood appear during your questioning, Dr. Francis?
Again, he seemed very frustrated and hostile when talking about Shan Lee and Brooke Jackson. And he also showed no remorse when it came to the death of Shan Lee.
So in your professional assessment, would you say that Mr. Jackson is competent in this trial?
Mr. Jackson is competent to stand trial. He understands his actions and the repercussions of those actions.
Dr. Edwards, are you familiar with Exhibit H?
Your Honor, objection.
As to?
Your Honor, earlier I stated I had an objection to the previous question. I believe the attorney may not have heard.
I believe that your objection was overruled.
Your Honor,
as to that she is an expert witness and can testify?
Your Honor, that wasn't the question I was objecting to. I was objecting to the question she asked just before this one.
Which was that? Which was what? I didn't hear any objection.
Your Honor, the question was to the competence of Mr. Jackson.
Okay, and I understand we have a stipulation already that he's competent to testify. And in addition, so yeah, if you had objected to irrelevance at the time, given the prior stipulation, it probably would have sustained it. That testimony is out and it doesn't really contradict anything in the stipulation. So I'm going to go ahead and allow it. Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Edwards, are you familiar with Exhibit H?
Yes, I am.
Your Honor, permission to show the exhibit?
Yeah, go ahead.
Dr. Edwards, do you recognize this document?
Yes, I do.
Do you agree that this is a true and accurate representation of it?
Yes, I do.
Can you identify it for the court, please?
It is called The Murder on the MMP Express, and I am the author of this article.
Your Honor, I now offer, file, and introduce Exhibit H into evidence.
Any objections?
No objections, Your Honor.
Okay. So admitted.
Dr. Edwards, how is the MPP scored?
Well, in this occasion, I use computer generalized results with my clinical judgment to provide a positive assessment of the defendant, and that in this case, that Brett Jackson is competent to stand trial and understands the repercussions of his actions.
Dr. Edwards, can you please read the line beginning with simply quoting?
Simply quoting the computerized interpretation constitutes a misapplication of the MPP2.
How did you score Brett Jackson?
I used the computerized results and my clinical judgment, years of experience to draw the conclusion that he is competent.
Just to clarify, did you simply quote the computerized results?
No, I did not.
No further questions, Your Honor. I now tender this witness for cross-examination.
Okay, Cross.
Yes, Your Honor. This isn't your first time testifying as an expert, right?
No, I've testified in over 12 trials before, yes.
And in every one of those trials, you testified for the state,
Yes,
just like you're doing here today.
yes.
And you've been paid for that testimony today.
Well, it is my job. I hope I am being paid.
Let's talk about what you found in your examination of Mr. Jackson. You found that Mr. Jackson drew his gun when he ran into Brooke Jackson and Shan Lee, right?
Can you restate that?
You found that Mr. Jackson drew his gun when he ran into Brooke Jackson and Shan Lee, right?
He told me in his interview that he drew his gun.
And that was out of self-defense.
That is what he said.
Because he believed that Shan Lee carried a gun.
He believed it. He did not see it.
So is that a yes or a no?
He believed that Shanley had a gun. So I don't know if it was truly self-defense or not.
Your Honor, witness is non-responsive. I asked for a yes or no answer to the question.
Okay. Any response to that? Go ahead. I mean, what was the question? I'm sorry. I missed.
Mr. Jackson drew his gun because he believed that Shan Lee carried a gun.
Okay, go ahead and answer the question. I'm instructing the witness.
That is what he said in the interview.
Let's move on to the test to perform that examination. And that personality test is called a multi-phasic personality examination, or an MPP, right?
That is correct.
You use that test to determine if the defendant is fit to stand trial.
His competency, yes.
If they understand the potential consequences of their actions.
Yes.
That test isn't used to prove guilt.
Can you repeat that? You cut out.
Mm-hmm.
I can repeat that. That test isn't used to prove guilt, is it?
It is to prove guilty intent.
So is that a yes or no? That test is not used to prove guilt.
It could be.
Your Honor, that's an unfair extrapolation. Nowhere in the witness's affidavit does it say that that test is used to prove guilt.
Yeah, I'm going to sustain that objection.
Your entire analysis does not prove anything about whether or not Mr. Jackson is guilty.
Was that a question?
That was a question.
Can you restate it?
Does your analysis prove anything about whether or not Mr. Jackson is guilty?
Objection, Your Honor. This is for the jury to decide. This witness is simply testifying towards the mental state that she has already stipulated to be allowed to testify to. She's not testifying towards his guilt, only his mental state during the incident and afterwards.
Mm-hmm. Response.
Your Honor, the expert witness has stated that her test isn't used to prove guilt. Therefore, she's qualified to answer if that analysis proves anything about whether or not Mr. Jackson is guilty.
Right. Given that the question is about whether the test is used for that purpose, it's not a testimony as to the ultimate question. It's asking whether that test is used to prove innocence or guilt. And so I'm going to allow her to ask that question.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mm-hmm.
Your analysis doesn't prove anything about whether or not Mr. Jackson is guilty.
It doesn't prove guilt.
Thank you. No more questions, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. All right, do we have a redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Edwards, when you interviewed Mr. Jackson, how did you assess his competency in this trial?
Mr. Jackson is competent to stand trial. Through years of experience and education that I have gone through, I can say that Mr. Jackson is competent, understands his actions and the repercussions of those actions.
Is it within your job to assess whether or not Mr. Jackson is guilty?
It is my job to access his intent, his guilty intent. That is what the MPP is for, and it's also for his competency.
Your Honor,
Mhm.
it's already been ruled that
Yeah,
this
sustain. I agree. Sustain. Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Okay. All right, next witness.
Does the prosecution rest, Your Honor?
Is that, all right, so.
Yes, the prosecution rests.
Great, all right. Defense, you can call your first witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The defense calls Kennedy Gill to the stand. All right, Ms. Gill, are you ready to testify?
yes.
May we proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Please introduce yourself to the court.
My name is Kennedy Gill.
And what's your occupation, Ms. Gill?
I am a licensed gunsmith and I operate a gunsmithing shop here in Grand City, Louisiana.
What exactly do you do as a gunsmith?
Well, as a gunsmith, I use my extensive knowledge of firearms and ballistics to build, repair, sell, and teach about firearms.
How long have you been a gunsmith?
I mean, I've been working with guns consistently since I was just 12 years old, but I've been operating my gunsmithing shop for 20 years.
And did you have a job prior to being a gunsmith?
Yes, I spent my teen years apprenticing with a gunsmith in my hometown, and then I spent 8 years in the Marines as a 2111 small firearms technician.
And who was that gunsmith that you apprenticed for?
Well, when I moved to Grand City after my time in the Marines, I apprenticed under renowned gunsmith Smithy McGee.
And do you have any formal education on gunsmithing?
Yes, after I got out of the Marines, I wanted to get to know the business side of gunsmithing more. So I attended the Pennsylvania Gunsmithing School where I graduated top of my class and received my degree.
Now, are you familiar with ballistics as well?
I am.
And how does gunsmithing relate to ballistics?
Well, ballistics can both be defined as the path a projectile takes in the case of firearms being bullets and the inner functions of a firearm. And they're both integral to my work as a gunsmith.
Do you have any experience with ballistics as well?
I mean, yeah, I have to work in the functions of a firearm every day to do my job.
Now, Ms. Gill, have you ever testified as an expert on gunsmithing or ballistics before in court?
I've testified as an expert 35 times before.
And how will you use your extensive knowledge in today's case? Excuse me.
Well, I was retained by the defense in today's case to analyze the firearm Brett Jackson had on his possession on July 1st, 2020, and determine the possibility of a misfire and the overall safety of the firearm.
Thank you, Ms. Gill. At this time, Your Honor, we'd like to tender Ms. Kennedy Gill as an expert witness in gunsmithing and ballistics.
Okay, any objection or desire to voir dire the witness?
Yes, Your Honor, I object. This witness is not an expert in ballistics. She is only qualified to be an expert in gunsmithing.
Can I respond, Your Honor?
You may.
We've already laid the foundation for the education and the experience with ballistics as it relates to trajectory of bullets and the inner working of guns, with it, which is closely related to gunsmithing as contained in the mock trial problem.
Okay, was there any prior stipulations to this witness?
The only prior stipulation, I believe, is that they are qualified to testify, I believe, for Exhibit F, but they are also qualified as an expert witness. They have the qualifications for an expert witness.
Okay, I agree with you in the terms of the expertise in gunsmithing. I'm not 100% certain as to the connection with gunsmithing to ballistics.
Yes, Your Honor.
Can you ask some questions to establish that?
Well, actually, Your Honor, in that case, we could just enter this witness as a expert in gunsmithing.
Okay, we'll allow this witness as an expert in gunsmithing.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Ms. Gill, what else did you do in your investigation for today's case?
Well, I physically examined both the exterior and interior of the firearm. I familiarized myself with Brett Jackson's affidavit. I conducted an interview with him regarding the firearm. I produced a diagram of the inside of the firearm for demonstrative purposes, and I also reviewed the ballistics diagram.
Now, you say you interviewed Brett Jackson. What did he tell you?
During my interview, he indicated that the scratch mark that was found on the butt of the gun was not there when he purchased it, and he also revealed that he bought the gun at a gun show.
Now, from your interview with him, did he seem knowledgeable about guns?
Not particularly. During my interview, I also tried to ask him about the trigger and if he thought it was light, but he didn't really seem to understand what I meant when I used the word light, so I specified if he thought the trigger was easy to pull, and he said that he did find it rather easy to pull.
Now, you mentioned examining the firearm. How exactly did you do that?
Well, first I examined the exterior of the firearm, and I was looking for any obvious signs of wear, tear, or an alteration that would anyway affect the firing process or the safety. And then I very carefully took the gun apart and looked at the inside of it to determine if there were any other signs of wear, tear, or alterations that would affect the firing mechanism or the safety.
At this time, Your Honor, I'd like to ask, or actually, Ms. Gill, do you have a copy of the firearm inner diagram with you today? And I will try to find it as well so we can screen share it with you.
I do.
Could you identify it for the judge, please?
Yes, Exhibit G, I believe you're referring to Exhibit G, is a diagram I prepared of the inside of the firearm for demonstrative purposes to explain the anomaly I found within the firearm.
Thank you, Ms. Gill. At this time, Your Honor, I'd like to ask you for permission to screen share on a separate device the diagram in question.
That's fine.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now screen sharing what has been marked as Exhibit G. Your Honor, are you able to see the exhibit on my screen?
I can, yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Gill, is this a diagram we were talking about just now?
Yes, it's the diagram I created.
Could you explain to us, for those of us who don't really know much about gunsmithing, could you explain to us what exactly this diagram means?
Well, this diagram, it is an accurate model of the inside of the firearm that Brett Jackson had on his possession, the one I examined. And for the purposes of today, the only really relevant part is A, which represents the trigger, the sear, and the seer screw, as that is where I found the anomaly.
So what makes the seer screw important in today's case?
Well, the seer screw and the seer do the important job of making sure that the gun requires the correct amount of pressure to pull the trigger and go off. If it is too easy or too hard to pull the trigger, it is unsafe.
So what could that mean in today's case with the seer screw and Brett Jackson?
Well, when I was examining the inside of the firearm, I found that the seer screw had been, which is represented by the little white dot inside of A, the seer screw had been loosened to an extreme level. It was incredibly light, which meant that it would require just the barest amount of pressure to go off.
Now, Ms. Gill, do you also have a copy of Exhibit F2 in front of you?
Yes.
Could you please identify that for the judge?
That is the ballistics diagram representing the trajectory of the bullet.
Thank you, Ms. Gill. At this time, Your Honor, I'd like to screen share what has already been admitted to evidence, I believe. Exhibit
Okay.
F.
That's fine.
Your Honor, are you able to see the exhibit?
I am.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Ms. Gill, what does this mean? What does this diagram mean?
Well, during my examination of the firearm, again, I found the scratch marks on the dent on the outside of the gun, indicating that it had been dropped at some point. I found that the trigger was light, and that along with the diagram before us just further corroborates what Brett Jackson said happened on July 1st, which is that the gun was dropped and then fired when it hit the ground, as is indicated a possibility by this diagram.
Thank you, Ms. Gill. So from the trajectory diagram you analyzed, along with the interior of the gun and in your interview with Brett Jackson, in your opinion, what is the most likely thing that happened?
In my expert opinion, the most likely explanation for what happened on July 1st is just as Brett Jackson indicated, is that the gun was knocked from his hand and then fell to the ground, and then the lightness of the trigger allowed it to go off upon making impact into the ground and discharged into the chest of Sean Lee.
Your Honor, objection. This witness cannot testify to the order of events on July 1st.
May I respond, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm not sure exactly what the objection is. I'm assuming it's an opinion on the ultimate issue. And if that is actually, Your Honor, I'd like to ask the opposing counsel what exactly their objection is.
My objection is that the witness cannot testify to the order of events as to when they occurred on July 1st.
In that case, Your Honor, I'd like to respond.
Okay.
Your Honor, my witness is not doing that. In fact, they're doing the exact opposite. They're simply using their expertise and their interview with Brett Jackson, and of course, their knowledge on gunsmithing to testify to what most likely occurred. That is exactly what I asked in my question. What is most likely to happen? And as well, that's what the expert witness testified. This is most likely that it occurred this way, not that it unequivocally occurred in the way that they are saying it did.
Okay. Given that the witness is testifying based on her personal inspection of the weapon, the observations on the butt of the gun, that kind of thing, I'm going to allow that testimony.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll ask the question again, Ms. Gill. So from the trajectory diagram you analyzed, along with the gun and your interview with Brett Jackson, what is the most likely thing to have happened on the incident?
Again, in my expert opinion, it seems the most likely thing that occurred was what Brett Jackson indicated had occurred, which is that the firearm was knocked from his hand and then made impact with the ground, that impact creating scratch marks and a dent that were later found. And then upon making impact with the ground, the incredibly light trigger allowed the gun to be discharged into the chest of Sean Lee at the angle that is given in this diagram.
Thank you, Ms. Gill. No further questions, Your Honor. I tender this witness for cross-examination.
All right, cross.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Gill. My name is Annie Moss, and I'm going to be asking you a few questions today. Let's start with your arrangement with the defense. Were you paid for your examination of the firearm used by Brett Jackson?
Objection,
I
Your Honor.
was.
What's the objection?
Relevance, Your Honor. Every expert witness is paid for their testimony. This has nothing to do with credibility. As like we've seen on the other side, every expert is paid and they are compensated for their time in trial, and this is completely irrelevant to the case.
Yeah.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You can.
I am going to be establishing my relevancy in the next line of questioning to establish this character of the witness.
Sure. And given that it goes to bias, I'm going to allow.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Gill, how much were you paid to testify today?
I was paid $10,000 for my examination of the firearm and to create my affidavit, and then I was paid an additional $2,500 to appear at court today. And that covered all of my travel expenses, that covered everything.
So to clarify, the defense is paying you a total of $12,500 for your testimony?
Objection asked and answered. The witness has already clarified the amount that they're being compensated.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Go ahead.
I'm asking about the total sum of money that the witness received, not the individual parts and why they were
Sure.
paid this
I'm going to
individual.
allow that.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Gill, would you like me to ask the question again?
No, it's fine. I can answer it. Yes, I was paid a total of $12,500, but I mean, it's my job to testify and to work as a gunsmith. I have to get paid to live my life.
If your findings hadn't been beneficial to the defense, you would not be here in court, correct?
Objection, argumentative. This is assuming the character of my witness, which has not been established at all. And additionally, it's arguing with the character.
I'm going to sustain that objection.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Ms. Gill. I would now like to discuss the firearm question. Your Honor, do we have Exhibit G? Permission to show Exhibit G.
Go ahead.
Can my timekeeper screen share it, please, for the court?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Gill, you do recognize this diagram, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Will you please identify the Seer Screw on the diagram?
It is labeled, it is the part in A, the white dot in A.
In your sworn affidavit, you explain that the Seer Screw holds the hammer back until the correct amount of pressure has been applied to the trigger, correct?
Yes.
And if the Seer Screw is set too light, would the slightest bump cause the gun to discharge?
As I already said, yes, the Seer Screw was loosened, and if it was loosened to the degree it was, it would have required incredibly little pressure to go off.
Because the gun requires very little pressure to go off, is it possible that pulling the gun too quickly from a side holster could cause the gun to discharge?
If the purpose of a side holster is to make sure that a gun doesn't go off. It's to hold the gun safely. So if the gun is drawn in the correct way, it shouldn't have gone off, as no particular pressure would be, there would be no impact on the gun if it was drawn correctly.
But if the gun was drawn incorrectly in a time of high emotions and very quickly, could it have possibly gone off accidentally?
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
I'm asking about how the gun could have gone off based on the differences of how the gun was pulled from the holster.
In that case, Your Honor, I'm gonna have to object to vague and ambiguous, as the question was if the gun had been drawn in a dramatic sense, which I don't think any expert witness could testify to what exactly a dramatic pulling of a gun means, as that is a very vague and ambiguous definition.
May I respond?
Yeah, no, I'm going to allow the line of questioning because given that, the witness has already testified as to the lightness of the trigger and that thing as such. I'm going to allow this line of questioning.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Gill, is it possible to tell who adjusted the sear screw of this gun?
It appeared to me during my investigation that it was adjusted by someone inexperienced after purchase. However, it was bought from a gun show, so it's up in the air whether it was Brett Jackson who adjusted it. And I don't even think he knew what the sear screw was, so I don't know why he would have adjusted it. So I know it appears that it was adjusted by someone inexperienced after purchase, but that could have been the gun show owner.
So the gun could have been adjusted after purchasing, correct?
As I said, it could have been adjusted after the person who sold it to him at the gun show bought it from the original manufacturer.
Even if the screw was adjusted when purchased, the defendant could have adjusted it further. Is that correct?
Objection. I believe this question has been asked and answered. It's already been asked if the gun had been adjusted after being purchased.
Your Honor, my apologies.
Yeah, I'm going to sustain that objection.
Thank
May
you,
I
Your Honor.
continue? Your Honor, permission to show the court Exhibit E.
Okay, go ahead.
May my timekeeper share it onto the screen?
Yes, you may.
Your Honor. Ms. Gill, do you recognize this picture of the gun?
Yes.
Isn't it true that you found dents and scratches on the handle of the gun?
Yes, on the right side, which is the butt and handle, there was scratch marks and a dent that indicated it had been dropped at some point.
Can you determine when those scratches and dents were made on the gun?
I cannot, but Brett Jackson in his interview with me told me that it was not there when he purchased it. And given that he said that the gun was dropped, it's reasonable to assume that that is where the scratches came from.
You have no actual evidence to support that the gun was dropped on July 1st.
Well, I have all of the evidence that I was given, in my expert opinion, that seems to be the most likely explanation for what happened.
Thank you, Ms. Gill. I would like to finish with a few questions about the trajectory of the bullet. Your Honor, can I show Exhibit F to the court?
Yes, you may.
Do you recognize this diagram?
Yes.
According to the trajectory, if given that Shan Lee and Brett Jackson were close enough together to make contact as Brett Jackson stated in his affidavit, Mr. Jackson could have been holding the gun near a holster on his side when it was fired, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, unfair extrapolation. Although in the problem it does say that they were in close proximity, it does not state any numerical value, and therefore they cannot make the assumption that they were close together as in an arm's length, and that would be unfair extrapolation.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes.
This witness has interviewed Mr. Jackson, and he states that Shan Lee was close enough to make contact with the gun, which tells us that he was close enough within an arm's length to Mr. Jackson.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yeah.
This diagram is not, as it says, not to scale. So while it can be used as a demonstrative aid to show the trajectory of the bullet, it should not be used as an aid to say whether or not Brett Jackson was at any location next to Shan Lee, because that is simply an unfair extrapolation.
As for an unfair extrapolation, I'm gonna allow the testimony. So I'm gonna deny the objection on that ground.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Gill, just to clarify, you have no evidence that definitely proves that the seer screw was not altered by Brett Jackson, correct?
Excuse me, would you like me to answer the previous question? I believe you were allowed to ask it, and I can provide an explanation.
Yes, please. Would you like me to re-ask it?
Yes, please.
According to the trajectory, couldn't Mr. Jackson have been holding the gun near a holster by his side when the shot was fired?
Well, as we've already established, this is not to scale. And also, if he was standing within arm's length, as he indicated, the gun was knocked from his hand. And if it was knocked from his hand at such an angle, it would have gone behind him. It would have been had been knocked out of his hand and then landed behind him, as indicated a possibility by this graph.
Thank you, Ms. Gill. Just to clarify, you have no evidence that definitely proves that the seer screw was not altered by Mr. Jackson, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. I believe this question has been asked and answered, but I may be mistaken given that we had to go back on a
Your Honor,
question.
may I respond?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm asking this question to clarify for the court the response.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Would you like me to re-ask the question, Ms. Gill?
Yes, please.
Just to clarify, you have no evidence that definitely proves that the Seer Screw was not altered by Brett Jackson, correct?
Well, it's not my gun. I hadn't seen it before until after it had been adjusted. So I don't know for 100% sure, but I do not believe he had the experience in firearms to even know what the Seer Screw did. And also, he indicated that the man who sold it to him at the gun show told him that the trigger was light, which indicates the possibility that the gun show owner did it. And I cannot say for certain, but it seems most possible that the gun show owner was the one that adjusted it.
Nor do you have any definite evidence proving the gun was fired from the ground aside from your speculation.
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative. We've established this as an expert witness, and they are not only, well, they are allowed to speculate on behalf of the people they've interviewed, as in Brett Jackson, but she's also looked at evidence to this case. So I think this question is argumentative in saying that my witness is only speculating.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
I'm asking this witness about the definitive evidence that proves the gun was fired from places other than the ground.
Yeah, given that you're asking about what the evidence is, I'm going to allow that.
Yes, Your Honor.
Would you like me to re-ask the question?
Yes, please.
Do you have any definitive evidence proving the gun was shot from the ground?
As I said, the evidence that I examined proved that the most likely explanation was that the gun was dropped to the ground and fired, not that it was the only explanation. And while it technically could have been fired from waist level, as is indicated by the prosecution's case, that just doesn't seem likely given the evidence.
Thank you, Ms. Gill. No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, do we have a redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Gill, are you ready for the redirect?
Yes.
Ms. Gill. So are you giving the defense more favorable testimony because you're being compensated for your time today?
Of course not. I was paid to examine the gun, not to testify in a certain manner. And even if I was, I'd never disrespect the court like that.
Thank you, Ms. Gill. And lastly, given all the evidence that you reviewed in your interview with Brett Jackson, what in your opinion is the most likely event that occurred?
As I said, the most likely explanation for what occurred is as Brett Jackson indicated in his affidavit and in his interview with me, which is that the gun was knocked from his hand at an angle and it fell backwards, and then it made an impact with the ground.
Objection, Your Honor. That question calls for a narrative.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
The mock trial handbook, as rule 4.18 states, is that a narrative is that when the witness is called to tell a story that is completely irrelevant to the trial and the matter of the fact. My expert witness is saying something that is completely relevant as they are giving their expert opinion on what happened and whether or not Brett Jackson could have purposefully fired a bullet. That is.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't mean to. Yeah, I'm going to allow that question. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you like me to ask that question again, Ms. Gill?
Yes, please.
In your expert opinion, given everything you've reviewed from Brett Jackson's interview to the evidence you've seen, what is the most likely event that occurred?
As I've said, the most likely explanation for what occurred was that the gun was knocked from Brett Jackson's hand at a backwards angle, made impact with the ground, leaving the scratch marks in the dent, and then the light trigger allowed the gun to be discharged by that impact into the chest of Sean Lee.
Thank you, Ms. Gill. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Do we have another witness?
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, excuse me. At this time, the defense would like to call Harper Hill to the stand.
Okay. I'm sorry, Harper. We have the witness?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Go ahead. Direct.
Yes, Your Honor. Please introduce yourself to the members of the jury.
My name is Harper Hill.
Do you know Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Let's talk about your relationship with Mr. Jackson. How do you know him?
I met Brett back in high school, and he was quiet and I was loud, but he didn't really know how to stick up for himself. So we just kind of clicked. And since then, I've been his friend for almost more than 20 years.
So are you close to Mr. Jackson?
Yes, pretty close. I've known him for so long that I can like read him like the back of my hand, and I've been with him, and he's been with me for all of our ups and downs in our lives. But I never do anything against my morals for him. I'm only here because I want justice for both him and Brooke.
Are you close enough with Mr. Jackson to know about his relationship with Brooke Jackson?
Yes, I was even their best man at the wedding. I was always with them.
There's already been some testimony today in court about Mr. and Miss Jackson's relationship. What can you tell us about it?
Well, from what I've seen personally and from my point of view, they've had a great relationship until Brooke turned it into one of manipulation, deceit, and constant gaslighting about her affairs.
When did that relationship start to break down?
Like I said, it started out great, but they ran into some trouble in September of 2019 when Brett found out that they couldn't have any kids.
How did Mr. Jackson react to that news?
I was there with them, and oh man, Brett was just so
Your Honor, this
sad.
is hearsay. Harper Hill cannot testify to what Brett Jackson has stated outside of court.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes.
Your Honor, this is not hearsay, as there is no out of court statement being offered for the truth of the matter asserted in that statement.
Yeah, so I believe the witness was going into what the defendant had said outside of the courtroom. Given that the defendant's here and has testified or is going to testify, I believe, I'm going to allow him to offer the testimony.
Thank you, Your Honor. How did Mr. Jackson react to that news?
I was there with Brett when he received the news, and Brett was just so sad. He really wanted to have kids, but he was scared to tell Brooke because of the way that she would act if she received the news.
And did he ever tell Brooke Jackson?
Eventually he did, and that was the beginning of the end.
How did Miss Jackson react?
Oh man, I will never forget that moment. I've known Brooke almost as long as I've known Brett, but that was the meanest I've seen Brooke in a very long time. She cursed him out and said some really mean things about him and blamed him for something that he couldn't even control.
Did Mr. and Miss Jackson make up after that incident?
I really wish to say that they did, but I don't think they ever did.
How was their relationship after that incident?
Brooke started to cheat on Brett, and after several confrontations and counseling, Brooke still kept emotionally manipulating Brett by cheating on him with Shan and yet even though she promised to end the affair. Brett's always been more silent, and Brooke had a way with words, so she was always able to twist the situation around.
How do you know about that?
I learned that Brooke was sending a lot of text messages to Shan Lee, who was Brooke's coworker, and Brett had also shown me a lot of the series of emails from an email account called slead@gmail.com, and Brett presumed that it was Shan Lee's. I also experienced firsthand when I saw both Brooke and Shan walking hand in hand romantically into Shan Lee's apartment.
Did you ever tell Mr. Jackson about that?
At first I didn't really want to. I mean, I was really afraid. I knew that it was going to break Brett, and I mean, I almost didn't want to at first, but I knew that the situation was going to go worse from there. So I knew that I had to tell him, and yeah, I had to tell him eventually.
How did he react?
I mean, it broke him. It was so devastating. And he's been trying to convince himself that Brooke had already ended the affair. He still had a lot of faith in her, but it was the last straw. I calmed him down afterwards, though.
And what happened after Mr. Jackson calmed down?
Brett realized that his problem wasn't with Shan. He's not mad at Shan. His issue was with Brooke, and his best course of action was to get a divorce.
Were you aware of any steps he took toward getting that divorce?
Yes, he came to me and asked if I could help him find a divorce attorney, and I did. And he visited them. He was advised by these attorneys to gather evidence of the affair in order to divorce Brooke for all that they had.
To your knowledge, did he start to gather evidence of that affair?
Yes, that's what we were trying to do on July 1st, 2020.
You mentioned that Mr. Jackson had been trying to gather evidence for that divorce on July 1st. What do you mean by that?
So we decided to go to Bob's Big Burgers to gather surveillance footage of Brooke and Shan on any possible romantic dates to prove that Brooke was indeed cheating on Shan.
Did you go with Mr. Jackson?
I meant Brett, but I did go with Brett. I drove him to the place and I stayed in the car as he went in, but by God, I really wish that we could have picked any other day to gather the evidence.
What do you mean by that?
Brett walked outside and he ran into Brooke and Shan. He looked shocked and I was too. I mean, we expected to get the footage and just get out of there just to get the next footage. But a few seconds later, everything went south. The next thing you know, the next thing I saw a gun fall to the ground and I heard a gunshot.
Did you see that gun when it went off?
I believe that the gun was on the ground before I heard the shot, but I'm not entirely sure.
Did you happen to get a good look at that gun?
Not exactly. I wasn't too close to the scene or to the incident, but I knew that it was Brett's because I've known Brett to carry it around for self-defense purposes.
Would you recognize that gun if I were to show it to you today?
Yes, I would.
Do you have copies of the exhibits with you?
Yes, I do.
What do you have in your hands with you?
What has been previously marked as Exhibit E.
Your Honor, this time I'd like to screen share what has been entered as Exhibit E.
You may.
Just to clarify, did you see Mr. Jackson pull the trigger on this gun?
No, I didn't see Brett use the gun or put the gun on anybody.
What did you do after the incident?
I saw that Brooke was on the phone with someone. I presumed it was the police, so I knew that the ambulance was arriving. So I figured that I needed to leave and tell the police what I saw. And I left my contact info and called back a few times, but no one seemed to be interested in taking my testimony. Eventually, I talked to Sergeant Cameron Cole, though.
What happened when you talked to Sergeant Cameron Cole?
She told me that she didn't want my testimony, and it was odd to me. It was almost as if she already reached a conclusion without even talking to an eyewitness like me.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. No more questions, Your Honor. I tender the witness for cross-examination.
Okay, cross.
Hello, Mr. Hill. Now, I would start by asking, you stated that Brent Jackson was scared to tell Brooke that he was infertile, correct?
Yes, because he was afraid of her reaction, of how she would react to the news.
So is it right to assume that he knew before Brooke did and chose not to tell her?
No, he was just as surprised as I was because I've been there at the time.
But he did know before Brooke and choose not to tell her immediately.
We have objection. What's the objection?
Your Honor, the objection was to speculation for the previous question. Is it safe to assume that Brent Jackson was aware of his infertility and chose not to tell Brooke Jackson?
Okay. Given that I don't know that, I think you were, I guess, testing the assumption, asking the witness what he knew. Why don't you rephrase the question?
Yes, Your Honor. Is it fair to assume that Brent Jackson knew of his infertility before Brooke Jackson?
No, I've known Brett for so long and I've never known him for being infertile until he got that news.
However, it is fair to assume that Brent Jackson did find out about this news prior to Brooke Jackson.
Objection?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Your Honor, opposing counsel is re-asking the question you've already ruled on that she should restate.
The witness has not given me a yes or no answer to my question.
Yeah, I agree. You're asking him to speculate, though, as to to the extent you're asking him to speculate, I'm going to sustain the objection.
Yes, Your Honor. I'll move on. What was Brooke and Brent's relationship prior to 2019?
Brooke and Brett's relationship, is that what you said?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, they were such a happy couple. It was like out of a fairy tale. I mean, I've never seen a romantic relationship as good as that. I mean, it was really, really nice to see, and I was so happy for them.
Do you think Brett loved Brooke?
Your Honor, I apologize for the interruption, but I believe my computer is lagging a little bit. So would I be all right to switch computers?
Yes, yeah, go ahead.
May I
Thank you, Your
continue
Honor.
my line of question?
Could we wait
Wait.
until my lawyer?
Yeah, hold on a second. Let her switch.
Permission to stop the time on our behalf while they change their computers?
Yeah, do that. Yeah. Okay, I think she's back now. So let's go ahead.
Isn't it true that you only couldn't see Mr. Jackson pull the gun because his body was blocking your line of vision?
I'm not exactly sure what you're asking. If you're asking if I saw Brett Jackson pull the trigger, then my answer is no.
Is this because Brett Jackson's body was in your line of vision?
Well, yeah, but from what I've seen after the gun dropped to the ground, I'm sure that he didn't. I'm pretty positive that he didn't shoot. Well, he didn't pull the trigger.
Okay. No more questions, Your Honor.
All right, do we have a redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
Okay. Next witness.
Your Honor, the defense calls Brett Jackson to the stand.
Okay, we have Mr. Jackson.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, sorry. Hello, Mr. Jackson. My name is Justine. I'm going to ask you a few questions. Would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Brett Jackson.
Oh, wait, can you pause real quick? I can't hear anything. My apologies. Mr. Jackson, can you please say whatever again?
Yes, my name is Brett Jackson. Can you hear me? Is my microphone working?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. And what is your relationship to Brooke Jackson?
Brooke is my ex-spouse.
How long have you known Brooke?
Well, we met in college and then we dated for a few years. We got married in 2015 and we recently got separated.
And did there ever come a time during your marriage when you suspected that Brooke was having an affair?
There were many times, but the first one was January 2020.
How did you become aware of their relationship?
Well, I was on Brooke's phone and I found some text messages between her and another man that indicated to me that she was having an affair.
And what was your reaction to this?
I was heartbroken. I couldn't believe that she had gone behind my back like this, but I felt that it was my fault that I wasn't good enough for Brooke. So I confronted her about this and yeah.
And after you confronted Brooke, did the affair stop?
Well, I had thought so for a time, but I found out.
Objection, Your Honor, speculation. This witness cannot testify towards whether or not the affair stopped, only towards what their opinion is on the matter.
Your Honor, if I may respond, the emails have already been shown to the court and the dates indicate that the affair was ongoing. And as seeing Brett Jackson found the emails, this is within his right to say if the affair continued within this time period.
Yeah, I'm going to allow him to testify as to that.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Jackson, would you like me to re-ask the question?
Yes, please.
And after you talked about it with Brooke, did the affair stop?
Well, I had thought so for a time, but I found out that no, it did not stop.
And how did you find out that it didn't stop?
Well, I found a hidden email account that Brooke had made to talk to this Shan Lee that again told me she was still having an affair behind my back.
And when you went to counseling, did counseling work?
No, it did not.
Why?
Because later, after she had said she would stop the affair again, I found out for yet a third time that she was still having an affair with me or behind my back.
What was this third time?
It was when my friend Harper Hill told me about.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Your Honor, if I may respond, this is not hearsay under Rule 801 D1. This is a witness's prior statement which can be tried in court. Harper Hill has testified to this statement and is available to confirm if necessary.
Yeah, I'm going to allow it.
Mr. Jackson, would you like me to repeat the question?
I don't think that's necessary. My friend Harper Hill told me that he had seen Brooke and Shan still together behind my back, and I just knew that they were still having an affair.
And do you remember when this was?
Yes, I do. It was May 20th.
And how do you remember that date?
Because the next day, May 21st, is when I met with a divorce attorney to begin the process of separating from Brooke.
And is there a record of your visit to this divorce attorney?
Yes, there is.
And do you happen to have that record with you right now, Mr. Jackson?
Yes, I'll have to grab it here.
Your Honor, may I screen share it while Mr. Jackson grabs it?
Yes, you may.
Now, Mr. Jackson, can you explain what this is?
Yes, this is my record to my visit to the divorce attorney.
And is this a fair and accurate copy?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to offer, file, and introduce Exhibit B in evidence.
Okay, any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
Okay, so admitted.
And Mr. Jackson, can you read the date on this record for me?
May 21st, 2020.
So prior to Big Bob's. Okay. And what did you do when you met with your lawyer?
Well, we discussed the process of getting a divorce.
And what was this process of divorce?
Well, it was gathering evidence to try and prove that Brooke was having an affair so I could successfully protect my assets in getting a divorce.
And did you go anywhere to gather evidence?
Yes, I did. I went to Bob's Big Burgers.
So, Mr. Jackson, am I correct in saying that this divorce document is the reason why you went to Big Bob's Burgers on July 1st, 2020?
Well, it was for the purpose of getting a divorce, yes.
Yes. And did you ever gather footage?
No, I was denied the footage on that day.
And Mr. Jackson, I know this may be hard, but I would like to talk about the encounter with Brooke and Shan that day. Did you know that they would be there as well?
I knew it was a place they frequented, but I had no idea whether they would actually be there or not on that day. I had especially hoped they wouldn't, since July 1st was me and Brooke's anniversary. I was hoping she wouldn't be cheating on me that day, but no, I did not know whether or not they would be there.
I'm so sorry, Mr. Jackson. What happened after this?
Well, after I was denied the footage, I walked out of the restaurant and I saw Brooke and Shan together on the sidewalk.
And then what happened next?
I saw Shan reach into their coat pocket and I thought he was going to pull out a gun on me. So I drew my weapon in self-defense.
And was that gun knocked out of your hand?
Yes, after I drew it, Shan then charged towards me and knocked the gun out of my hand to the ground.
Objection, Your Honor. Since the opposing counsel has already stricken the ability of the witnesses that were there to testify to the order of the events, as they did with Brooke Jackson, it is only logical to not allow this with Brett Jackson as well.
Your Honor, if I may respond to that, we were only confused on the timeline of whenever Brooke closed her eyes before or after the shot. This is Brett Jackson's truth of what happened that day. There is no inconsistent timeline as we have seen with Brooke.
Okay.
Your Honor,
Go ahead.
if I may respond.
Yeah.
Brett Jackson cannot testify to the truth of their actions. That is up for the jury to.
Your Honor, if I may, the opposing counsel can confirm or clarify this on cross-examination, but as this is the direct examination, Mr. Jackson has a right to explain what he saw or what happened that day.
Yeah, given that he's testifying as to his personal observations, he's allowed to do that. So I'm going to allow it.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Jackson, would you like me to ask the question again?
Yes, please.
What do you remember after the gun was knocked out of your hand?
Well, I remember hearing a gunshot and then seeing Shan clutch their chest.
And what did you do next, Mr. Jackson?
Well, by that point, I was terrified. I had no idea what exactly had happened, and I was scared. So I just wanted to get myself to safety, knowing my gun had misfired. I didn't want it to misfire again. I didn't want anything else to happen. So I got out of there. I mean, I got myself to safety by leaving the scene.
And Mr. Jackson, did you come back to the scene?
Yes, very shortly after it felt safe to me, I did come back to the scene.
And what happened when you came back?
I explained to Brooke that it was an accident. That I explained to her what had happened, how my gun had misfired on the ground.
And what was her reaction?
Well, in response, Brooke claimed that she would frame.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay. The witness is testifying to words made outside of the court.
Your Honor, if I may respond, this is an exception under Rule 801D1. This is a prior inconsistent statement made by Brooke Jackson in which she didn't confirm that she said anything to Mr. Jackson after the incident. We anticipate that from Brett Jackson's answer, that Brooke Jackson's dishonest answer was meant to conceal the fact that she framed Mr. Jackson. If you would allow some leeway into this answer, Your Honor.
Given that it's an objection, prior inconsistent statement, exception to the hearsay rule, I'm going to allow it.
Mr. Jackson, I'm going to ask that again. What was Brooke's reaction?
Well, after I explained to Brooke it was an accident, she said to me, "No, I am not going to let you get away with this. I am going to tell the police that you shot Shan," which just, yeah, that's what she had said to me.
I'm so sorry, Mr. Jackson. So after Brooke attempted to frame you, did you have a chance to explain to the police what had happened?
Yes, I did. I was able to talk to an officer and write an affidavit.
And what did you tell the police?
I told them all the same things I'm telling you now because it's the truth.
And from that day, in July 2020 to today, has your story ever changed?
No, not at all.
Mr. Jackson, did you ever intend to harm Shanley?
No.
Did you intend to shoot Shanley?
I never intended for anyone to get her ever. No, I did not intend to shoot Shanley.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor. I tender the witness for cross-examination.
Cross-examination.
Good morning, Mr. Jackson. My name is Haley Cleason, and I have a few questions for you. Isn't it true that you told Harper Hill that you were afraid to tell Brooke of your fertility issues?
Well, yeah, I knew it meant a lot to me and Brooke that we were going to have kids. And when I found out, I was scared to tell Brooke, but I knew I had to. It was just an inevitability that was looming over me. But yes, I did tell Harper I was scared.
So then logically, you had known before Brooke did about your fertility issues?
Objection, Your Honor. This is speaking for the witness. It's argumentative. If the question was restated in a different way, maybe, but right now it's argumentative, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I'm simply asking a yes or no question.
Yeah, it's cross-examination. I'm going to allow that.
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you need me to restate the question, Mr. Jackson?
Yes, please.
So then logically, you must have known prior to telling Brooke about your fertility issues.
I mean, very slightly prior, but we effectively found out together.
You did know prior. Thank you. Isn't it true that you went to Big Bob's Burgers on your anniversary?
July 1st, yes.
And isn't it true that when Big Bob didn't give you the video footage, that you were disgusted and angry, and you in fact stormed out of the restaurant?
Well, yeah, I was upset that I couldn't get the footage. I was sad that I was going to have to go find some other evidence of Brooke cheating on me. So yes, I was upset at Bob after that.
So it is fair to say that this was your mental state when you saw Brooke and Shanley that day?
Objection, Your Honor. This is improper character evidence, and in terms of mental state, Mr. Jackson's not a psychiatrist or anything. he's not really attesting to his mental state in anything.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes.
The defendant just confirmed that they were in fact disgusted and angry, and I am simply clarifying that this was still the mental state whenever of his own personal mental state whenever he saw them.
Yeah,
Your
given
Honor.
that she's asking about his own personal mental state, I'm going to allow that.
Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor.
And isn't it true that you knowingly brought your concealed carry weapon to an establishment where you had expected to be under the influence of high emotions, whether you had been given footage or not?
Objection, Your Honor. This is improper character. They're trying to, the opposing counsel is trying to prove that Brett Jackson acted in accordance with his mental state towards the act of second-degree murder, which is not allowed.
Again, Your Honor, I believe that we've already established that this witness can testify to their own mental state.
Your Honor, if I may respond, yes, he can testify to his mental state, but it is up for the juror to decide, and not him, to decide if that mental state was in accordance with the action of second-degree murder.
Yeah, but given that she's asking him about what his expectation was when he was going there, I'm going to allow that.
Thank you, Your Honor. Isn't it true that you didn't actually see Shan Lee with a weapon, but you were merely worried that he had one?
Well, yes, I felt threatened by Shanley. I thought he would pull out a gun on me, so yes.
Though you in fact saw nothing in his hand, but you drew your gun anyway.
Well, I drew my guns after seeing him reach into his coat pocket, so I couldn't really see his hand, but I found out later he did not have a weapon.
Though you did not see one. Your Honor, permission for my timekeeper to screen share what has previously been marked as Exhibit D.
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Jackson, do you recognize this document?
Yes, I do.
Can you identify it for the court, please?
This is my invoice that I received after purchasing my firearm at a gun show.
Do you agree that this is a true and accurate representation of this receipt?
Yes, I do.
Your Honor, I now offer, file, and enter into evidence Exhibit D.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor, no objections.
All right, so admitted.
Mr. Jackson, can you please read the description under the item line?
A modified 9mm pistol, tan and black.
Isn't it true that you were aware that this gun was modified when you had purchased it?
Well, yes, the gun show person I bought the gun from had indicated to me that the trigger was loose. He told me it would make the gun aim better. So yes, I was fully aware.
Can you also read the date of purchase?
January 23rd, 2020.
Do you recall what date that you saw the messages that you believed to be between Brooke and Shan?
Yes, I do. January 21st, 2020.
So just to clarify for the jury, you bought your gun a mere 2 days after you believed to discover your wife having an affair.
Objection, Your Honor. The prosecution has vehemently denied this affair. So to ask questions on it would be either they confirm that there was an affair or that there was no affair.
Your Honor, I'm simply asking about what after he believed to discover one. I did not confirm or deny any affair. I'm asking whether after he found the messages that he thought were an affair.
Yep, I'm going to allow that.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. I now have a few questions about the events of July 1st. Isn't it true that after the gunshot, you fled the scene?
Well, yeah, I was scared. My gun had just misfired. I didn't know if it was safe to stay or not, and I wasn't sure what had happened. So yes, I did leave the scene.
You say you feared for your life, though if you had the ability to retreat, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. This is vague and ambiguous. What does necessarily retreat mean? Like in a sense?
We have already established that he has left the scene of the crime, which is basically the definition of retreating, leaving the scene.
Yeah, I'm going to allow that.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you need me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
You say that you feared for your life, though you had the ability to retreat, correct?
I wouldn't have had the ability to retreat if Shan pulled out a gun and shot me. So I guess I could have technically ran away at the sight of Shan, if that's what you're asking. I'm not really sure what the
Yes,
question.
that is what I'm asking. Thank you. And when you ran away, were you aware that Shanley had been shot?
Well, I had seen him clutch his chest and I had heard a gunshot go off. So I had assumed that maybe he was shot. I wasn't entirely sure by the time I had ran away.
Mr. Jackson, isn't it true that you said you believed Brooke to be the love of your life?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Your Honor, I'm going to establish the relevance within my next lines of questioning.
Okay, go ahead and connect it up.
Do you need me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Isn't it true that you believed, isn't it true that you have said that Brooke was the love of your life?
Yes, I have said that.
So then would it be fair to say that when you attempted to divorce her, you believed that you were then losing the love of your life?
No, by that point, the marriage was already
Objection,
over.
Your Honor. Time for cross-examination is over.
Okay, have we exceeded the time?
The time just finished, Your Honor.
It just
But-
finished.
Yes.
Okay,
May I redirect, please?
yeah, okay, yeah, thank you. So now that the time is up, we're gonna have to go on to redirect, okay? Thank you.
Mr. Jackson, why did you buy that gun?
I just bought it for self-defense.
And you're not an expert in guns, are you?
No, not at all. I'm not very well versed in them.
Right. And in the end, Mr. Jackson, did you intend to kill Shanley?
No, I didn't intend for anyone to get hurt. It was an accident. I didn't want anyone to be hurt that day. I just wanted to have Brooke out of my life. I just wanted to get a divorce and then be done with the whole situation. So no, I didn't intend for anyone to get harmed.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Jackson. No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, does that conclude the witnesses? Are we done with witnesses? Yeah?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense rests.
Okay. All right, let's move on to closing. Oh, yeah, let's take a quick, just a short recess. Let's take let's say a 5-minute or 10-minute recess. We'll come back at 10:50, okay? That way you can prepare for your closing and everybody can get a little quick bathroom break. How about, does that sound good?
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes.
All right, great. We'll
Thank
be
you, Your
back at 10:50. Thank you. All right, everybody back? We ready to go?
Permission to begin my closing statement?
Yeah, let's just make sure everyone is back. I'm looking for someone from the defense.
Thank you, Your Honor.
The defense is back, Your Honor.
Okay, all right. And I'm assuming our jurors are back.
All good here.
Okay, all right, let's go ahead. Go ahead and proceed.
May it please the court. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, throughout this trial, the state has made it evident that Brett Jackson succumbed to the 7 deadly sins: pride, envy, and wrath. On July 1st, Brent Jackson clearly intended to cause Shanley great bodily harm due to an injured ego, irrational jealousy, and uncontrollable anger. It was our burden to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Brent Jackson intentionally shot Shanley. It has been established by both parties that Shanley was shot and killed by the weapon that Brent Jackson owned and carried on July 1st. During the trial, it has been proven that Brent Jackson made verbal threats against Brooke Jackson and anyone she formed a relationship with. It has also been proven that Brent Jackson bought a modified firearm days after their paranoia of their wife having an affair intensified. The gun was unsafe because of the loose trigger, and Brent Jackson drew the same weapon moments after becoming frustrated because they could not obtain security footage of their ex-wife. Finally, it has been confirmed that Brent Jackson fled the scene after Shanley was shot, only to return later to claim their innocence. The opposing counsel has tried to instill doubt in the evidence presented that proves Brent Jackson's guilt. They have tried to cast doubt on the eyewitness testimony of Brooke Jackson, who saw their ex-spouse pull their weapon and shoot Mr. Lee. However, they have failed to discredit Brooke's account on the murder. On July 1st, when Brent saw Brooke and Shan together, their jealousy overcame their better judgment. Their intent was clear since they immediately pulled their weapon when faced with Brooke and Shan. The opposing counsel tried to claim that the defendant feared that Shan had a gun. However, no weapon was found other than their own. This is yet another example of Brent Jackson's paranoia and wrath, causing him to act irrationally. Today, you have heard statements from Officer Cameron Cole and Dr. Francis Edwards, both of whom have extensive knowledge in their fields and the credentials to back up their claims. Officer Cameron Cole was dispatched to investigate and the defendant was dispatched to investigate and found the defendant astonishingly calm, showing a complete lack of remorse for the death of Mr. Lee, likely due to the envy felt over the relationship between Brooke and Shan. Officer Cole also found no evidence to support Brent Jackson's claim of self-defense, nor that the gun hit the ground before the shot went off. There was also gunpowder residue on the clothing of Brent Jackson, proving the gun had been shot near him. Dr. Edwards testified that they had become frustrated when talking about Shan Lee in the incident, agreeing that Officer Cameron Cole's assertion that Brent showed no remorse was true. Brent Jackson is not insane. They are completely mentally competent, and it was with full intent that they shot Shan Lee. When looking at the actions of Brent Jackson, it is a true testament to the powerful hold that pride, envy, and wrath can hold on someone. A person turned murderous because of their potent emotions, causing them to cause such catastrophic actions. Brent Jackson was hurt, and on top of that, Brooke Jackson, Brent Jackson's spouse, was becoming close with someone else. This led to resentment and envy, which caused him to threaten Brooke. This snowballed into a storm of pain and fury that ended with Shan Lee's death, Brent Jackson's arrest, and Brooke Jackson's broken heart over her lost friend. After the defendant himself said he wanted to be done with the whole situation, and the simplest way to do that would be, as the opposing counsel stated, remove the obstacle. In this case, in the case of Shan Lee, which proves that Brent Jackson had intent to cause great bodily harm, or kill Shan Lee. This negates the opposing counsel's attempt to instill reasonable doubt. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we urge you to bring a murderer to justice by declaring Brent Jackson as guilty. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. Defense?
The defense has a closing, Your Honor.
Mhm.
The members of the jury, we've all seen Christmas movies where Santa Claus is real. Maybe you've heard of the Tooth Fairy. Those are stories we tell our kids. Make-believe, feel-good stories. After all, we all wish that a jolly old man would give us presents or a benevolent fairy would exchange money for a teeth. But here's the thing. They're just stories. Stories we create to make ourselves feel better. And none of us has ever seen Santa Claus or the Tooth Fairy. And members of the jury, that's important because seeing is believing. The state got up here and told you a story about what happened on July 1st last year, about how pride, envy, and wrath made Mr. Jackson commit second-degree murder. And members of the jury, the only sin that's been committed is wrath. Wrath when Brooke Jackson framed Brett Jackson for a crime he didn't even commit. Brett Jackson waived his Fifth Amendment right to testify today. He didn't have to say a thing. Unlike the prosecution, he hasn't decided to tell a story. He's decided to tell the truth. The prosecution has charged the defendant with second-degree murder. In doing so, the prosecution bears the burden of proof. They have to prove that Brett Jackson had a specific intent to kill or inflict great bodily harm. They had to prove that beyond a reasonable doubt, the highest burden in our legal system. If you have any reasonable doubts, any missing parts, anything that makes you stop and think this doesn't add up, the judge will instruct you to give Brett Jackson the benefit of those doubts and find him not guilty. And members of the jury, the state's case was filled with reasonable doubt. This trial comes down to one issue. Did Brett Jackson intend to kill or injure Shan Lee? The answer is emphatically no. First, you heard from the prosecution. Dr. Edwards told you that they've never evaluated an MPP in court that was scored correctly, and that incorrect scoring leads to inaccurate results, and that the MPP is the only test she used to evaluate Mr. Jackson. Sergeant Cole told you about how sensitive the gun's trigger was, about how the slightest touch could have made it go off. Sergeant Cole also told you that based on the trajectory diagram she created, the gun was shot from far below the belt line. Now, Brooke Jackson has lied to you several times today. First, she told you she wasn't cheating on Mr. Jackson. You've seen the text and you've seen the emails between her and Shan Lee. You've heard from Harper Hill that Brooke and Shan walked into Shan's apartment hand in hand. And Miss Jackson even told you that she was falling madly in love with Shan Lee. So members of the jury, I want to ask you how we can believe this witness when she says she saw that gun go off. You didn't hear from a single other witness who saw Brett Jackson pull the trigger, because he didn't. Next, you heard from the defense. Brett Jackson told you himself what happened that day. He didn't have to do that. He had a constitutional right to remain silent and not testify, but he chose to waive that right to tell you the truth about what happened, and that Shan Lee knocked that gun out of his hand and it misfired when it fell to the ground. Kennedy Gill, a firearms expert, explained to us how the physical evidence she saw confirms that the gun accidentally discharged after being dropped, and that it would have been highly unlikely for a gun novice like Brett Jackson to successfully aim and fire such a precise shot one-handed from waist level. Harper Hill confirmed that he saw Brett's gun fall to the ground. He also told us that Sergeant Cole wasn't interested in taking a statement from him, an eyewitness to the incident. Members of the jury, why not? Because any evidence of Brett's innocence would ruin Sergeant Cole's 90% conviction rate. Members of the jury, the prosecution wants to convict Brett Jackson, just like we all want to believe in Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy. But just like Santa and the Tooth Fairy, seeing is believing. What we've shown you today is the truth. Shan Lee's death was an accident. And because of that, we ask you to render a verdict of not guilty. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Your Honor,
good?
do we have time for a rebuttal?
Yes, you may.
The counsel has tried to instill doubt in Dr. Edwards through questioning of her authenticity. The defense has also attempted to
Objection.
What's the objection?
Opposing counsel hasn't reserved time for rebuttal.
Okay, in a trial, they would typically get an opportunity for rebuttal. How much time is left?
about 30 seconds, Your Honor.
Okay, hurry up. You can finish.
The defense has attempted to claim Mr. Jackson being wrathful. The mentality is what led Brent Jackson to be vengeful and give him the intent to harm Shanley or kill him. The defense claims things that has never been said in the trial. No further rebuttal.
Okay, all right. And that concludes our trial. Great job, everyone. All right. I don't know, can we give feedback now, or what's the?
I think it would be fine if we got feedback right now.
Yeah, okay, well, look. I'll tell
The
you
team
all.
would also appreciate feedback, Your Honor.
Yeah, okay. And I'm sure the jurors here who are also all attorneys would love to give you some feedback as well. I thought you guys did a fantastic job. The hard part with these trials is that you're kind of stuck to the script, right? And so when you're objecting, unfair extrapolation, that kind of thing, it was a little difficult for me because, you have to distinguish between, okay, is this an unfair extrapolation, or were you guys upset with the way the witness was testifying, right? And so in a normal trial, you can't, you won't be able to look at the judge and say, Judge, the witness is not saying what I want them to say, right? What you would do, so for instance, there was an instance where the wife was saying something about like, well, I don't recognize those texts, whatever, but then you have this prior affidavit where she says she received these texts or she had these emails, right? And so what you would say was, well, wait a minute. So you're saying these aren't your text messages? You're saying these aren't your emails? Okay, you recognize this document? This is your affidavit, isn't it? And you see right here where you said that you received these text messages, so that's some of the things that to be mindful of. It is frustrating when, and it is scary too, when the witness doesn't say what you expect them to say. It's always a terrifying thing in trial. And so you got to be prepared to say, okay, if this witness doesn't say what I think they're